Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 0 of Unhallowed. I'm your host, Patrick MacFarlane, and my co-host is my wife, Lizzie MacFarlane.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today.
So we're really excited to launch this episode and this podcast. This actually is a topic that's very near and dear to us because it's how we met.
Yeah, so Pat and I met at the University of Minnesota in Ann Tandy Triber's Gothic Horror Fiction class. It was my very first class at the University of Minnesota, and it was Pat's, what year were you? Junior?
I was a senior, I think.
You were a junior. I'm just going to lay that out right now.
Okay, I can't remember.
So this was a class that specifically went into Gothic horror fiction, so mainly kind of think about like the Victorian era. I just picked a random elective because I wanted to do law school. And why did you pick the class?
It sounded cool.
Well, I mean, in the description of the class, it said we would be talking about such classics as Dracula, Frankenstein, and, other short stories that were within that realm of fiction. And being a little bit of a creepy gal myself, I thought it sounded interesting.
At the time I wanted to become a horror fiction author, and I had written some pieces, and I was a creative writing focus.
And who was your favorite author then?
I had lots of them.
But just throw one out there.
I don't know. Well, everyone likes H.P. Lovecraft. I don't know if we'll be talking about some H.P. Lovecraft in here, but...
And maybe a little bit more modern. I remember at the time, Pat really being into Stephen King.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And Robert Bloch with Psycho. I thought Psycho was really good.
But that's a little bit more modern than we want to go with what actual stories we're getting into. But I think what I really like about a Gothic horror fiction is even though it's written in such a... what word am I looking for? It's definitely written in a way that's, you have to read a little bit more closely. But I kind of wanted to pull that into some more, maybe like connect it to a modern story or to a film or music or something like that and make it a little bit more accessible.
Yeah, I think it's a little antiquated, and as much as I love the aesthetic of Gothic horror, it's not what all the kids are reading these days. And in a lot of ways, it's a bit less accessible. So we want to make it more accessible and connected to some modern, more modern works of art. And we'll see how that goes because this is episode 0 and we haven't recorded episodes 1, 2, and 3 yet, which is what we're planning on launching with. So we'll see how that evolves. I also wanted to make a point that we are not putting ourselves out there as experts on this. No.
And even though I ended up being an English bachelor's, we aren't specialists.
Well, it's not like we went to grad school for this.
Right.
And so I don't want this to be so lofty and academic and esoteric that it's not accessible or it doesn't appeal to a lay audience.
So forgive us sometimes if we sound a little bit out of our depth or if something's not correct.
Yeah,
but
we'll learn along with you guys.
Right. To kind of go back to how we, met in this class and sort of how it progressed from meeting in a class to being married. So it was the first or second day of class, and one of the first things that ever happened as an interaction wise between me and Pat was he corrected my pronunciation of a German author in front of the whole class and kind of gave me a little bit of a spark of humiliation, I would say.
Oh, wow. This is a great way to start off our founding mythos.
Who was the author again?
It was Goethe.
Oh, right. And I said
Goethe
Gotha
I don't
or
know,
something.
this is my hubris, is that Goethe probably isn't the correct pronunciation anyways.
As you can't talk.
Yeah. So what happened then?
Okay, so then I saw you the next class. You were wearing a hat with one of my favorite bands on it.
What band was that?
Cannibal Corpse.
So Cannibal Corpse, and we're metalheads, and there's going to be some crossover here, but
right.
it goes with the Gothic horror aesthetic.
I think so, and so I, thinking to myself, not only did this guy correct me, but he's really good looking, and he seems like he knows what's up, and now he's wearing a hat with a band that I like on it. Maybe I should just say hi. So I think I like tapped you on your shoulder or something, and I said, nice hat.
Yeah.
And then I walked off down the hallway, and the next thing I know, I'm being chased by a 6'3.5" tall guy saying, wait. And I was assuming that I was going to get like yelled at or something.
Oh, really? Did I come across that way?
Well, you're very,
intense.
Yeah, that's a good
Sure.
word.
I was wearing, I don't know, I would wear my leather jacket and motorcycle boots at the time. Sometimes I even had like a bullet belt with M16, 5.56 rounds on it. And that was probably intimidating for people in this liberal arts college.
It just, grabbed my little emo girl heart or whatever.
Well, you had blue hair at the time.
Well, then I had purple hair. A couple weeks later, I had blue hair.
Oh, okay. It was a transition. So what happened, there was this heavy metal group on campus that it was purely platonic because I was in another relationship at the time.
And it really did start off just as us being friends. And I remember even in that, we talked for probably 45 minutes after that class, just, talking about interests and getting to know each other a little bit. And at the end of that 45-minute or so conversation, the very first day we'd ever talked, I said, I have a feeling we're going to be great friends.
Yeah. And it was lucky because Lizzie had to wait for a bus. I think you had to wait an hour for the next bus to come to take you back to, where were you living?
I was actually living in...
Was it near Uptown?
Yeah, then. And so, not too far from the University of Minnesota campus. However, when you don't have a car and you rely on public transportation, it sort of ends up, you're not on your own timeline. So we did end up, really getting to know each other, waiting for the bus and waiting for the train over those next few months. And that eventually blossomed into, maybe feelings of a little bit more than friendship.
Of passion.
And there was a text of "Don't put me in the friend zone, babe."
Oh, wow.
Or something. So
over Thanksgiving. So that's the timeline. I guess that's late into the semester.
So anyway, we ended up getting together, dating, getting engaged, getting married, and now here we are.
Yeah. And so in a way, this is a revisiting of our own history, but a lot of the time we spent talking about, of course, what we were reading in class and spooky Halloween-y stuff. And we had a big debate over whether Judas Priest or Iron Maiden was the better band.
Iron Maiden all the way.
And I like Judas Priest, but they're both really good. Anyways, this podcast isn't going to be about heavy metal or
horror movies
or per
music,
se.
But I think, as I said a little bit ago, I think it's connecting elements of the story with maybe something a little more modern, or maybe just with another story. Example of that I feel like would be the title, Unhallowed. Not only would connect with that time frame and the verbiage they used, but it's also a album from the Black Dahlia Murder.
And the Black Dahlia Murder is a melodic death metal band from Detroit, Michigan. I don't know if it was Lansing but Trevor Sternad is the lead singer, and he is an excellent lyricist, and he writes lots of very super duper
Gothic
horror lyrics. And I don't want to make this podcast inaccessible to people who are listening, but I think that I said this podcast wasn't going to be about heavy metal, but I think I want to explore lyrics of different heavy metal songs. And maybe even if you don't, and we'll develop this later in, episodes that come up, but I think that even if you don't enjoy heavy metal, the lyrics, if you enjoy Gothic horror, it could turn you on to something, if you're more open-minded, that you find worth in it. And
well, there's definitely elements of prose and poetry within lyrics that people don't always think about. And so I think when you're looking at something, maybe lyrics or modern poetry, maybe it could reflect back to something that we're going to be exploring a little bit deeper, in our stories. So I think the first story that we're going to explore is, go ahead.
The Castle of Otranto.
The Castle of Otranto, which I actually ended up taking a few more Gothic horror and Victorian courses within my time at the University of Minnesota. And this was one of the stories that we actually discussed in my senior seminar. So I'm excited to look at this again.
It's funny because we'll be touching on it, that it actually isn't a very good story. We'll be talking about that. There aren't a whole lot of podcasts that are in this specific niche, so I'm excited to explore that. However, most of them start with the Castle of Otranto, and it's widely considered to be the first work of Gothic horror. So we're going to be diving into that in the next episode. So if you are, I don't want this to be a show that has homework, but if you are one, there will be spoilers. If you are one that really wants to do close reading and read along, maybe it can be a book club of sorts. So at the end of every episode, we're going to be saying the work that we will be doing in the next episode. And we want to release these episodes on a weekly basis. So that will give you a week. Usually we'll be doing short stories. If we do a longer work, maybe we'll have a series or several episodes dedicated to it. But we'll give you time in advance so you can read along, and then we'll dive into it in the next episode. So there will be spoilers, spoiler alert. These are works that have been out for, in most cases,
hundreds of years,
a couple hundred years, 150 years.
So we'll, just in the theme of giving you kind of some advance, we're also going to be talking about Charles Dickens' The Signal Man.
And Premonitions of Death.
And then I think our episode 1 will be actually addressing what Gothic horror means, because if you said Gothic horror to my mother, for example, she would instantly think about some Hot Topic, black clothes wearing white makeup, person. And she's not going to be thinking about the origins of that word. And maybe to others, they would be thinking about Gothic in the terms of architecture or art per se.
Well, the Gothic architecture does come into play with why Gothic horror is called Gothic horror.
Exactly.
So we'll explore that too, but also, I don't know. I think that we know your mother, but she was born in Britain.
Yeah. And
immigrated to Canada, but I don't know. I think she's a more classical lady, and she would know what Gothic horror means as opposed to emo.
Well, yeah, I just was using it sort of as a broad example, but yeah, my mother actually was one of the reasons why I was so enthralled with the idea of Victorian art and literature. My mother lived in sort of her grandmother lived in more of a Victorian era home, and actually has a ghost story about seeing a gentleman of that time in the house, like a ghost of that time. So maybe I'll bring that up in the next episode and kind of go into it a little more deeply. I do like ghosts, paranormal, supernatural themes. So that does come up quite a lot in Gothic horror. So I think sometimes maybe we can introduce some stories like that as well. For example, like the Turn of the Screw has a lot about seeing ghosts and apparitions in it. And it reminds me a lot of the movie with Nicole Kidman.
The Others.
The Others.
That was a good movie. That was a good one. We'll be exploring that. I was thinking The Lady of Shalott, too. You know that pre-Raphaelite paintings that we like?
If you want to see what we're talking about, if you look up pre-Raphaelite art, let me see if I can find an author or an artist's name, but they just draw, or they paint some of the most like beautiful, ornate, detailed, almost a little bit more photorealistic. And they have a beautiful Lady of Shalott painting. Yeah,
it's incredible. And so everything that we talk about will be in the show notes pages. And I believe, so if you go to our website, it's www.unhallowedpodcast.com. At the top of the website, there will be a bunch of menus. There's like an about page so you can see our picture. There's episodes. And I want to put an episode list there with links so you'll be able to find the show notes pages. There's also subscribe, where you'll be able to find all of our links to the iTunes page, to Spotify, to Stitcher, all those other platforms that are escaping me right now. There's also a support page, so if you'd like to support the podcast, there's several ways to do that. We do have very low overhead, so anything that you would be able to help us out with would be a huge help. There's a Patreon page, and we're getting ready to see what kind of benefits that we can offer to anyone who would support us on a monthly basis. There's a PayPal donate button. There's a cryptocurrency. If you're into cryptocurrency, I'm super into cryptocurrency. So there's addresses that you can send us crypto there. There's also an Amazon affiliate link where you can do your regular Amazon shopping, and our show will get a commission that we will use to upgrade equipment or to purchase books to do for the show. We're also working on partnering and becoming an affiliate with Kobo. That's part of the Rakuten network. And if you're on Android, that's where you get your ebooks, as opposed to maybe like an Amazon reader, or I think you can buy on iTunes, can't you?
I think.
Some books too.
Something like that.
So that's how you can support us. And that will be at unhallowedpodcast.com/support is where you can find that. Subscribe. Similarly, unhallowedpodcast.com/subscribe, or just search us on any of your podcatchers of choice. There's also a bunch of social media badges. So we are on Twitter, and we'll be developing that. Our handle is at unhallowedpod, twitter.com/unhallowedpod. We also have a Goodreads account, which I think will be super exciting. And that you'll be able to find that by searching us on Goodreads, or just go to unhallowedpodcast.com/Goodreads, and that will bring you there. There's a Patreon bumper, and we're also talking about YouTube and trying to see if there would be any demand for a YouTube show, like a video component. It is significantly more work, but if we find that there is demand for a YouTube show so you can see our smiling and pretty faces.
Well, now that I mentioned that you were very good looking, I think that the demand is going to be so high.
Oh, jeez. Okay. Well, similarly, I might have to fend off the boys with a barbed stick from you.
There we go.
Well, so there's also, we'll be on Instagram, and Lizzie will be in charge of the Instagram page. The handle is also Unhallowed Pod.
Pod makes me think about like pod people.
UFO
like type stuff, which is another one of Pat's near and dear interest to his heart. But
yeah.
I don't know if we're going to go into any like UFO stuff in here, but I think I just wanted to mention, as we're sort of starting to wrap up here, if you have any suggestions for stories, books, music, movies, anything like that you feel like kind of fits the theme or you would love to share with us, there is going to be a contact us field that's going to be available on the website. Or we also have our email, which is
unhallowedpodcast@gmail.com.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks so much for you guys spending time sitting with us, listening to us today. And just to finish, I want to actually read a bit of poetry that we had read at our wedding by Alfred Lord Tennyson.
You have a much better voice than I do.
Love is and was my Lord and King, and in his presence I attend to hear the tidings of my friend, which every hour his couriers bring. Love is and was my King and Lord, and will be though as yet I keep within his court on earth, and sleep encompassed by his faithful guard, and hear at times his sentinel, who moves about from place to place, and whispers to the worlds of space, in the deep night, all is well.
So that just about does it. Go and explore our website, unhallowedpodcast.com. If you would please leave us a rating and review, that would really help us out as we get started. And hopefully in the future, we'll be able to connect with other podcasts that are similarly in our niche. We'll keep on the lookout for that and see if we can do any crossover episodes. But give us an email at unhallowedpodcast@gmail.com. And we look forward to bringing you more episodes. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.